Welcome to the Divine Radiance Project with your host, Stacey Turner, and co-host, Emma McDonald, where we share all about reclaiming your radiance as women in business, holistic health, money, mindset, and juggling it all around mum life. A place for women to learn about financial independence, entrepreneurship, and balance. From women who aren't scared to speak their mind and their truth. It's time to shine your brightest self and be the lighthouse. Hey guys, welcome back to the Divine Radiance Project. I am so excited to have you here for today's episode. I am joined by the beautiful Christine, and I'm going to share a little bit about her first before we dive into today's episode. So we're going to be chatting to Christine of Her Money Alliance. Her Money Alliance was founded by two sisters who want to empower women to do money the feminine way and become financially confident and savvy. Who are they? Well, let's focus on Christine. Christine Corcoran, I may be mispronouncing that, so I may get you to say that again in a moment. Christine is a business mindset master coach, speaker, podcast host herself, and creator of the Thrive Retreat. She's a qualified practitioner in master neuro-linguistic programming, matrix therapies, and an M-braining practitioner with an extensive study of human behavioral profiling, hypnotherapy, and leadership coaching. Through transformational mindset work, money mindset strategies, value-aligned business goals, and leadership skills, Christine coaches stressed out and overwhelmed businesswomen to grow and scale their businesses by becoming confident powerhouse women who charge what they're worth so they can thrive and succeed in business. Christine is also obsessed with money mindset and has helped hundreds of clients sell out their programs and workshops, raise their prices with confidence, and 6 times their businesses in less than 12 months. Ooh, very, very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me, Christine.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And did I pronounce your surname correctly?
Yeah, it was really close. So it's Corcoran. So it's just kind of let it flow.
Corcoran.
Yeah, Corcoran.
Yeah, nice,
And
nice.
then my sister's is really hard too. It's Matsuranis.
Okay, all right. I mean, maybe those are the sorts of names I just let people present themselves
Yeah.
so that I can get it first. So, I mean, that was the official bio introduction, and I love reading those because more often than not, the interviewee has written it themselves, and
True.
it's showcasing the best of you and what you see yourself as here to share with the world. So in your own words now, a bit more, I guess, colloquially and relax, like, do you want to share with us a little bit more about yourself and things that you love and some of the kind of main pivotal moments that have happened for you in your life that have led you to where you are now?
Oh, absolutely. So Sarah and I obviously are sisters. So we created Her Money Alliance only a few years ago, a couple of years ago, I should say. And it's something that has been like a love, a passion that we've really spent energy in putting into life or turning it into life because of the differences of what we bring to the table. So we as growing up in the same household, it was really interesting after myself doing money mindset work only probably 7 or 8 years ago. And then my sister Sarah, who's always been in the financial space her whole entire career. It's really interesting when we were having conversations around money and about our different experiences with money over our lifetimes, but also through our childhood. So it's so interesting. So we're a few years apart, but it's so interesting how she took her experiences of what money meant for her and as in her childhood, and then turned it into this need to actually want to be fully across her numbers and around her finances to make it work for her lifestyle so that she was super confident with it. I took the other path. I was like, caught up in the scarcity, caught up in the fear around not knowing my numbers and not being good with numbers. I was always told at school that I wasn't good at math. And so I went down a completely different path and really struggled with money for a very long time. And so I would get money and I'd throw it away. I'd get it and I'd throw it away. And so it wasn't until I started my own business that all of this sort of stuff started coming up. And I recognized that I really needed to work on my money and my relationship with money and started to explore it. Saw massive growth in my own business, which I work with women in business. As you mentioned in my bio, we actually have 2 businesses. So I have my business, which is my personal brand, and as a personal coach. And so I work with business owners to help support them grow their businesses, work on their money mindset. And so by doing all of this stuff for myself, I was like, this stuff is amazing. Like, I wish more people knew about it. So I started implementing it into the work that I was doing with my clients, saw incredible results, and then started creating more programs around it. And so then when I was talking to my sister about it and she was part of the journey. So she is my confidant and I share everything with her. And so we were talking about this, and she was like so passionate about the money side too. And even though we'd lived in the same household, it was so interesting how we both came away from that with different experiences with money. And so she made it her mission to make sure that she knew her money. And then I was like, oh, this is scary stuff, and I'm not even going to do anything about it. And so until I had to. And so we came together because we were passionate about really helping women to become more confident with their money. Because in my work that I do, I see it become such a sore subject. It's something that women feel so awkward talking about, and it really does detrimental damage to someone's business, because if they don't get the money side stuff right, it can really impact the growth of their business, or actually end up causing them to give up on it and go back to a job. And so Sarah has gone down a different path where she's been in the financial world her whole life, doing mortgage broking and wholly but other spaces, other areas, which if you want to read her bio, it's in the bio. And she actually started developing a money program for children in schools. And so we recognized that there was like a gap between, well, she's helping the kids, I'm helping the business owners. How can we help just women in general? And so that's when we founded Her Money Alliance, because we want to help women to be much more confident and savvy, because there's so many statistics as well around these days where more money are taking care of the money, and they're not confident with it, and they're trying to do money the masculine way. So I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into how it all came together and why we're so passionate about it, because it does make a big impact. Money is a huge catalyst in the majority of our lives, and it can be either a really stressful, horrible experience, or it can be something that supports our lifestyle. It can be actually a really good relationship with it.
Definitely. Yes, I love that. Thank you so much for giving a background, because it does, yeah, it gives more insight into where you both came from and how you came to be where you are now. And I mean, I love that you have recognized in yourself that you needed to do a lot of that work, and then it's a lot, I guess, more transparent and authentic to then practice what we preach. And so I can relate in starting to tap into some of that money blocks work. And my husband and I have done some stuff alongside one another, being in different households growing up, but having very similar money blocks. We've been able to start to work through some of those together. But you still notice them come up, don't you? Like every now and then that little voice and comes in, or the energy, the frequency isn't quite right, and you have to do the work again to work on that. And I heard somebody share with me once, money is just an amplifier of what is already there. So anyone that's got these beliefs around money is evil, or rich people are assholes, or like whatever the belief system is that our parents have bestowed upon us, we get to rewrite that story. And if you are an asshole, yeah, more money is going to make you more of an asshole. Whereas if you're a good human being and you
100%.
receive more abundance, then you can share that abundance with the world, and you're worthy of it too. You don't have to give it all away. Like, you are worthy of receiving that. So what are some of the kind of starting points that you give? I mean, I don't want to like just take all of your knowledge and information, but what are some of the starting points that you like to share with people for tapping into shifting this?
So, I mean, we could be here forever. And so, yes, you can ask any question, please, like, feel free. So where shall I start? So firstly, I guess like the key piece is the programming. Like you just mentioned, like we've been bestowed this stuff from our parents, and it's not their fault. We're not judging them. They had their own experience with money, and they had their own upbringing and their own education with money as well, which shaped their mindset and shaped their relationship. And so we all have these associations from childhood that impact our everyday experience with money. So, for instance, like I was just chatting with a client just about this before, and when she was growing up in her household, there was a lot of fighting that was attached to money. And so she was like, and also her dad was someone that hoarded money and was really frugal with money. And yet her mum was someone that was like, make sure that you spend it on yourself, like do things that are nice for yourself, and reward yourself, right? And so this client has this push pull going on of like, should I hold on to it or should I spend it? Should I hold on to it? Should I spend it? And so there'd be times where she would hoard for a really long time, and then she goes and splurges, and then she feels really guilty with splurging. And that's because there's the associations that she has from childhood, right? So they're connected to that in the subconscious mind. And so we have this programming that constantly impacts us. And so if we're not aware of it, then we don't realize how it's impacting us. But other times it's like when we start to become much more aware, by the sounds of it, you're starting to really notice like, okay, but why do I think that about money? Where did that thought even come from? So when I started my business, I had this hesitation around making more money because I had never made a lot of money in jobs that I've had before. Like I've done well, but not great, like a lot of money, right? And so when I started to hit like really good money in my business, I sabotaged it really quickly and was just like throwing it away. And I was like, this isn't working. How do I overcome this? And so I needed to recognize like what is the programming that I have connected to money, the relationship with it. So I had some self-beliefs about it around not being good with the numbers. But then this other really vivid memory I have of when my family and I was in the car with my family and we were leaving an event, and another family friend left the same event in a really flashy new car. They just bought a new car, and my parents judged them in the process of like, oh, look at them flashing their money around, right? They made a comment, and I was this little kid in the back seat, right? Made this comment about them being really flashy with their money. And so my subconscious mind at that age, right? We're a sponge at that age. We just take it on board with no context, with no understanding. And so that meant that I took on board that it's not okay to be flashy with your money. It's not okay to even have a lot of money because look at them, they were fully judged by it because of it. And so I took that on board as if you're flashy or you have a lot of money, you're going to be judged, and you're going to be judged by people that are very close to you. So be careful. So I adapted that, right? So I took that on board. And so I was really conscious about whether I was sharing anything about money. I felt really awkward talking about money. And so the relationship that I would have with it, anybody ever talked about money, I'd avoid that conversation, right? So would never ever talk about it, would never publicly show where I was spending it. I would never tell people if I'd bought something for myself that I was really excited about. And I really started to notice this behavior. And I was like, but why is it? And it wasn't until I recognized that I was actually sabotaging my next level of growth. So I'd hit some precipices in my business where I was on that precipice of that next stage. And I was like I had this resistance show up in my body, and I was just like, and I kept sabotaging this next level. And I was like, what is going on? And it came back to that belief system of like, if you hit this means you're actually doing very well. And if people know, they're going to judge you. And so I had to unpack that belief system to work through shifting it so that I no longer could be impacted by it, right? So I could let that self-sabotaging behavior go, because what we've attached to money or the associations we have with money doesn't necessarily mean it's true because of a past experience. So we get to cultivate a new relationship with it by adapting our money mindset that's going to support our growth and expansion. Because at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that money is just an energy. It's a resource that we get to use, just like oxygen you get to breathe, just like water that we get to drink. It's a resource that we use as part of our life, right? So if we look at it as a resource, we don't question whether someone has more money, someone has more water and go, oh, we should judge them because they've got more water. They're being flashy with their water. Like we don't do that. So, but we give so much power to money, right? Because it is connected to survival, it's connected to power, it's connected to so many things in the world that they deem to be important in their eyes, right? Whereas we get to take a step back and go, hang on a minute, how can I look at it like an energy source? And how can I utilize it in a way that feels good rather than it be the bane of my existence or the cause of my stress every single day?
So good, so good. Um, you were making me think of the book by Lynn Twist, The Soul of Money.
Oh
Have you
yeah, yeah,
heard of that one? Yeah,
yeah.
that's one of the first ones that I was introduced to when I started my money mindset journey. And I think she speaks about money as an energy in that book, and that was where I started to shift that. Yeah, it's such a beautiful book. Um, and just starting to think about these things in a different way and hearing your stories and how that can really probably relate to people listening to this, they're going, oh yeah, okay, the adults around me when I was growing up, womb to seven, that sponge, what were they talking about, and was I absorbing that? And it's even more, I guess, confronting when it happens as an adult. Love my parents dearly, and yes, I love that you pointed out there's no blame here, especially if mom and dad are listening to this podcast. Love you guys. But it's a noticing, it's an awareness, and it's a, can we rewrite the story, and how can we move forward from this? And
I think as well, like, if you don't mind me saying, like, we need to recognize that, yes, everyone has their own experience, and everyone also chooses what to continue to hold on to. So we have belief systems, whether it's about money or anything else, we hold true belief systems as part of our identity and we live into that. So if we have a belief system that you have to struggle or that money should be stressful, then you will live into that existence. You will live in accordance with that existence. So you will make money stressful when it doesn't necessarily need to be. You will make money be a cause of fights. You will make money be this stressful thing that just causes so much drama, when really we need to come take a step back and actually address our own connection and how we relate to it, if that makes sense. So when we look at other people who have those belief systems that are living into accordance with those belief systems, let it be okay that that's how they choose to live their life.
Yeah.
And again, like sometimes that long-term whole life programming, right? They've lived into that existence their whole entire life. They have so much proof and evidence from the world to prove that to be true. And if they let that belief system go, it could impact how they feel about themselves in their world. And that's literally like ego death, right? So it's part of our identity of who we believe we are and who we are within this world. And if we question that, sometimes it can be very scary to go, well, who would I be without that belief? Or who would I be without that thought? And that can sometimes be very confronting for people. So, and I've had the exact same experiences where I've had my parents do the same thing, like say little comments. And the way that I deal with it myself is I always just go, that's okay. That's their truth. And that's okay. Right.
Yes,
And
I
I
love
just
that.
keep living my life.
Yeah. And that action that you just did with your hand. So I'm a yoga teacher and a Reiki master. And I was like, oh yes, that's a
Okay.
return to sender is
Yep.
my mantra. Like return to sender. That yeah, that's is it a me problem or a them problem? It's not a me problem because I'm working through my stuff. It can stay a them problem until they're ready to, if
Yeah.
ever, work through it. And I love that. So I mean, tapping into obviously I can tell that you're very passionate and this is a true gift for you. And you've had a lot of powerful, effective change with yourself and with others. But what would you say is your or are your main core values that you show up with day to day that are impacting the way that you live your life?
Love that question. So my main core values would be, one would be integrity. I'm always someone that does what they say they're going to do. And I very much live that in my business. I'm very forward and transparent in the way that I like to run my business and who I work with and who I don't work with and all those things. Connection is a really big one for me as well. As someone who has always valued connection, I value really deep connections. And so I'm always looking for those soul conversations and really feeling connected and like I've made some type of impact. So then that would lead me to then impact would be really important. Positive impact, really allowing that my passion does speak into the world in some type of positive way that has allows people to walk away from their any experience with me feeling better about themselves. That's my main goal with anything that I do with all my coaching, is to help people go like, let's let go of all the blame, the doubt, the fear, and just be so freaking grateful and proud of who the person that you are, because there's nothing wrong with you at all and you get to grow. So then that would lead me to my next one would be growth. Growth is a big one for me. I'm always learning. I'm always someone that is developing myself and expanding myself and finding new ways to be more limitless and challenging myself in that expansive space. So I love to embrace challenges. Challenges is one of those things that I feel like it's the only thing that really grows you. If you have those obstacles and challenges come your way, and the mindset that you have and the way that you embrace those challenges makes all the difference. So I love to embody growth as best I can. And that's something that, is challenging and fun and all the things all in one.
You are speaking my language. I'm like, tick, she's my people.
Yeah.
I feel like the easiest way to find out if I mean, obviously a conversation helps, but the fastest way to find out if somebody is going to be in alignment with you is to ask them their core values. And then, I mean, the next part of that, which I shared on another podcast recently, was don't tell me your values, show me your calendar. And I love how, as you're sharing your core values, you're speaking to how you're embodying them straight away, like how they make up part of your life. So that's really cool. You are definitely a woman of integrity. You can hear it. You can hear it, the
Thank you.
authenticity. I love it.
And I think it's something, a big thing. Like, obviously, I work with business owners, but even just in personal, like I used to do a lot of personal coaching before I delved into the business side, or pivoted into the business side. Values is everything. It is absolutely everything. When you know your values and you know actually how you're fulfilling your values and you're doing it in a way that actually feels in alignment for yourself, but also that it's actually within your own control. Because one of my biggest lessons that I had before I pivoted in my business was I recognized that I was relying on external things to fulfill me. And so I actually had to do that really deep values work to be like, oh, hang on a minute, how am I fulfilling them for myself? And that gave me this space of like never ever needing the external to fulfill me, or never ever needing the external to validate or approve or rely on how it's going to make me feel. So I think that's one of those biggest things that I just want to always impart on people, is that so many times we feel like the rest of the world is doing things to us, or things are happening to us, but it's actually happening for us to expand us. But when we choose to actually take back that control and choose to like intentionally choose to go, how do I want to feel and how am I going to do that for myself and fulfill myself internally, everything else, the rest of the world is easy, right? Like
Yes.
nothing else has to be impact you, because a lot of the time we think that, yeah, like we don't have a choice in how we feel, but you absolutely freaking do. You get to generate the emotions within yourself, and how you wake up each day and how you choose to spend your life and how you choose to spend your day is a choice. So if you're choosing to wake up and peter to the old patterning or the programming that we have from yesterday, because we are literally working against our old selves, right? We're working against the old patterns. But if you wake up each day and go, oh, I'm just going to feel the way I felt yesterday, you're missing the point, right? Missing the point. We need to choose how we want to live and choose how we want to feel, and then practice those emotions in order for you to feel that way. And values is a really important way to do that. I do a lot of deep values work with my clients, and I feel like it makes the biggest difference in someone's life, because they are able to feel, when they feel in alignment with their values and they're living them, everything else is fun. Like everything else is so much better.
You literally come home to yourself and then
Mm.
you are grounded as fuck. And like, not from a needing to protect yourself mechanism, but no one can mess with you
Yeah.
just because you are so stable and solid and sure that then you can, yeah, you're not energy leaking, right? You're just
Yeah.
moving forward to your vision essentially, and bringing that to fruition, which brings me to my next question actually. And I'm like frothing on everything you're saying. So I'm like, yes, this is it. Um, Manifestation, we haven't used the word yet, but I'm getting the gist that this is something that you probably work with a lot, speaking to, embodying feelings. You are your thoughts, you live your thoughts. And so let's change your thoughts to then create your reality. Do you have specific practices that you work with your clients on in terms of manifestation? Or is it once we really nail the deep core work, once we release the limiting beliefs and start to visualize what the future looks like, we can make it the now?
Well, I would love to actually more speak to the balancing of the masculine and feminine with manifestation, right?
Mm,
Because sometimes I think people can get, I like to do both. I like to do the practical side, right? Of understanding, like, yes, there's money mindset work that you need to do, because if you're repelling money from limiting belief systems, or if you're judging money, if you're judging people with money, you're actually repelling it. So we need to work through shifting that stuff first before you can manifest it, right? Because if you're judging it, if you feel like it's dirty, it's filthy, it's untoward, like all the negative stuff, you're never going to want to move towards
shame.
it anyway, right? If you have
Yeah.
shame around it, guilt around it, exactly. So you need to work through shifting that first, before we can then start stepping into the manifestation piece. So, but I like to think about it from the perspective of the masculine and feminine. So the masculine is like the structure around money. So money loves to be managed. It loves to have a purpose. It loves to be claimed in a way, like not claimed to own, because you never own it. You're always circulating it. But it's like ask for what fuck you want, right? Like ask what you want and have that structure around it. Like write it down. Like if you've got money goals, write them down. Like don't just let them be like, oh, I hope to get a pay rise, or I hope at some point, groceries won't cost as much. Like what, like be really clear of how much it is that you want. So I believe in the masculine side of where there's structure, and that yes, there's elements of what you need to do as such, and the output that you need to do. But one of the biggest things, especially with women that I work with, they've been so conditioned in the masculine that they've really missed out on the magic of the feminine, right? When we allow and when we're in our feminine energy, which is for women, is their most powerful state, I believe. And so, actually, maybe I should just clarify, every single person has masculine and feminine energy within them. And I believe that money is also masculine and feminine, right? So we need to balance the masculine and feminine within ourselves. And so with the world that we live in, it's a very masculine world. And so we have been conditioned to do things in a masculine way, right? So we often do money in a very masculine way too. And so if we can actually learn to acknowledge and value the feminine qualities, and when I mean that is, the feminine energy is very much our sensuality, our creativity, our allowing, our nurturing, our loving, our being, right? So when we're just being that embodiment. And like, if you think about it, when a woman is completely in her feminine and there's no judgment, there's no woundedness coming from that feminine, it's just in her full embodiment, she's trusting her intuition, she's in full rest, she's actually in full coherence, she is like, she has a gravitas about her, like you feel called to be near her, right? She has this grounded confidence of like, I am woman, right? And so when they're in that full energy, they are attracting. So I believe in balancing the masculine and feminine, because then you become an incredible attractor,
Yeah.
right? So you're still setting the goals instead of and actually asking for what you want and managing your money and doing all the masculine things, but don't ignore the feminine, right? Allow yourself to rest. Allow yourself to know that you can absolutely receive when you're not doing anything. And so often what happens is I see this when we're conditioned from the masculine side, we're pushing, we're hustling, we're going hard with everything. We feel like we have to overwork and over deliver. We really struggle with the receiving, like struggle to receive compliments, struggle to receive gifts or time or energy or support, right? We're so in this masculine tunnel vision of like, I have to be the lone wolf, I have to do all these things myself, right? Whereas when you allow, you receive, like everything just flows in. And so we've got to also release the judgment for that too, because receiving is not weak. It's not, I think there's that judgment from the masculine. It's like, oh, but it's lazy or it's weak or it's fluffy or it's too spiritual. Like, actually, no, when you're fully embodied and you've allowed that balance of masculine and feminine, that's when you're at your highest manifestation energy.
Yes, magnetic, absolutely
100%.
magnetic. I love that. That's such a beautiful perspective to look at it from. Thank you for sharing that. And
Well,
so, I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of your own work. And sometimes when people talk about work, it's like, what are they even talking about? So I always kind of like to preface this with, if you don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about the work or the deep work, then that's your work to do, because everyone is going to have different stuff, that everyone's
100%.
walking around with their big backpacks full of shit. And I've actually heard somebody call it a bag of dicks before. I mean, we're already going to put the explicit on this podcast, so we might as well just go all in. But everyone's walking around with their bag of dicks, and we don't want each other's bag of dicks. We need to like unpack and get rid of the
Yeah.
baggage, and
Yeah.
that's the work that we're talking about. And everyone will likely have a different path or opportunity to release and get rid of that. But it sounds like you are very well skilled in supporting people in some or all of these processes, which is really cool. So guys, if you are seeking somebody, do definitely reach out to Christine. But through doing all of your work, I feel like very resonant with you in that there's not much that really scares you anymore, because you're so open to diving headfirst into the challenges and giving everything that you do go into your all, whether that's from the masculine or feminine or both balanced. Is there anything that scares you? Is there anything that comes to mind?
100%, 100%. And it's one of those things that actually I have a really interesting relationship with. So I have quite a high risk tolerance. So not everyone has that. So it just depends on your life experience. But I've always been someone that's dived headfirst, right, into things that I do. And I've always had, I guess I was brought up in a household too, like where you were encouraged to succeed, encouraged to be accomplished. And so I was always like, what's the next big thing that I can do? And like, I grew up in a very small town though. So even with a very small town, I grew up in a primary school where I was one of only 6 other girls. So like it was very small. And so very early on, I was like, how do I get out of here? Like I need to get out of here. And then when I was like 21, I basically packed up my life and went and worked overseas and worked on cruise ships for a few years and then traveled a lot. And so I have a high risk tolerance. But what I've actually trained myself to do, which I feel like really works well if you're a business owner, and I mean in life in general, is actually learn to recognize when you're in your comfort zone and when you're not in your comfort zone, right? And so recognizing that when you're in your comfort zone, you're probably not growing, right? So one of my highest values being growth. I want to continue to grow, and so I'm challenging myself to get out of my comfort zone as best I can. And so I've actually trained my subconscious mind to be uncomfortable when I'm comfortable. Does that make sense? So
That's
when I'm getting too stuck in the routine, or if things are just the same, or if nothing's been challenging, I'm actually itchy. I'm like, well, this is not fun. Like this feels gross. Like let me get out of this. And so when I recognize that's happening for myself, I think about like, what am I striving towards? Where am I challenging myself? And so I am absolutely scared in so many different situations. And I put myself in opportunities to be scared. Otherwise, I don't really feel like I'm really living. Like I'm not actually fully embodying what I do and also experiencing life. So like just recently I booked a trip to, I bought into this program where I flew to America to get into this room with this group of people that I'd never met, majority of them in my life. And so that was very scary. And so there's different things that I've been exploring. This year I'm writing a book, and like all these different things. And the thought of putting that book out into the world scares me,
Mm.
right? Like it brings up a lot of imposter syndrome. It brings up a lot of fear. And so I'm like not running away from it. I'm running towards it. And I know that I've got the belief in myself that I will navigate it no matter what, right? I have the tools, I know how to manage it, but also that it's okay, that I'm not making it a bad thing. I think a lot of people make the fear such a bad thing, whereas it can actually be, it is the precipice of change. It's the precipice of living your life to your fullest and allowing you to be like, oh, I get to experience these new things, right? The thought of just having a mundane life, living, doing 9 to 5, living in like, no, thanks. Yeah. Exactly. So I think sometimes it's that flip of like so many people get caught up in the fear and they stop at the feeling of fear. Whereas I would love people to be like, oh, look at this, I'm growing. It's scary because I'm growing. It's not a bad thing. How can I embrace it and actually learn that I get to grow through this? Like imagine who I'm going to become in the process of this. Imagine what's going to be on the other side of this.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
100%.
It's actually like a 12-page book that's out there that somebody flicked my way when I was in my early 20s. And it was one of the catalysts, that I was like, oh, okay, fear can be a good thing. And when we comfort ourselves, when we tend to our nervous system, when we remind ourselves that we are safe in
Mm.
that discomfort, that is where the growth lies. Like, and I love that you shared that. So yeah, that's really cool. And
You're
hopefully
so
gives
right.
people
Especially
that,
with the nervous system stuff. Like I feel like if people have had a lot of heightened fear or they've been in hypervigilance, then sometimes the thought of putting themselves outside their comfort zone is actually too much for their nervous system. So yeah, you're right. Grounding your nervous system and working on, and that's what I mean, coming back to the work, the work, the work, the work. Yes. Sometimes we need not a lot of nervous system work before we can move forward towards something scary.
yeah, for sure. And I think sometimes people are so lost in their anxious feelings or holding on to that victimhood or that discomfort that they know. It's like better the devil you know than you don't
Yeah.
know. But what if you could do the work to help, yeah, soothe your nervous system and know that your breath, being a meditation and yoga teacher, like your breath can actually be your ally that can bring you from anxiousness back to excitedness. And then you start to rewire that thought process, right? Literally in your body. And yeah, to reprogram yourself to go, this thing that's making me uncomfortable, I'm actually safe. I'm not being chased by a lion and everything is okay. And I will get through this.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need
I
somebody
think
to hold the space for you in that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it just depends on your life experience, right? And how much, or whether you've ever been taught to process your emotions in a healthy way and how you now process them, whether you do or not. Like there's a lot of women that I work with that literally are so unattached, not unattached, that's probably the wrong word, like
Disconnected.
just disconnected from their emotions, and they actually don't even have a vocabulary around emotions. And this used to be me, actually. Like I was fully in my masculine where I almost like was like, you can't show vulnerability, that's weakness. Like being emotional is being too weak and too fluffy. And so I had that self-judgment, and I know where that came from. It came from, I won't even go into it, but it came from parenting. But like we and no judgment there. Like that was the way that they parented, and that's what they learned. So and I still absolutely love my mum and dad. Like don't ever take that. It's never a judgment. But like I recognized that, and that was where my work began, because I was like, I had bottled up so much and repressed so much that it felt so big to even access. But doing the work and actually unpacking those stored unprocessed emotions and releasing those. And I mean, I've done so many different types of modalities when it comes to releasing all of this stuff. So that's why I think that you can experience that feeling of embodiment with me, because I do the work, right? And I'm always in the work, right? And I think that when you do that and you come back to an equilibrium where your body is like, oh, I don't have the old stuff to process as much. Now I can actually process on a healthy day-to-day basis. And so then you can actually learn to experience your emotions and learn to have a connection with them. So they're here to teach you something or show you something or speak something to you that actually serves your life, right? Whereas so many women are so disconnected from their emotions, they don't even know what they're feeling. They have no vocabulary around it at all. They feel like they actually can't even access their emotions, which means they're missing out on the positive emotions too. So they're not even allowing themselves to feel good. And we have to have that balance, right? Otherwise, what's the purpose of life if you're not even allowing yourself to feel good in the feel good moments? So
Mm-hmm.
I think our emotional regulation is really key. And I think that the more that we do that work and we allow ourselves to actually feel, that's the feminine energy coming back into that connection with your emotions, because that's what sets you apart from every male. Like, honestly, it's your connection with your emotions, your connection with your intuition. And I actually read a study the other day saying that women actually have more brain matter than men, which, and it actually gives us a sense of being able to feel frequency, where men don't have this ability. So when we walk into a room, we feel what's happening within the room, right? You can sense it. As a woman, we can sense that. Men can't sense that. So that's why sometimes you're like, like, can you tell that that person was in a really bad mood? And you guys like, no, what are you
Nah.
talking about? Like, how could you not tell, right? Women have that ability. Like, so allowing yourself to really honor that and to connect with your emotions, it can serve you in so many spaces in your life, right? Like learning to actually really trust your emotions and not avoid them or be scared by them. You can manage them, but you can also really allow them to be. So I was saying this to a client the other day, like when you've worked through all of that old stuff and then you're able to process on a regular basis, an emotion should move through your body within 90 seconds. But it's not until we actually attach to it, then we hold on to it or we repress it or avoid it, that's where it becomes a problem, and it becomes stored emotion, which is really not good for your health. So we
Yeah.
want to actually learn to process on a really regular basis. So we're being really in connection, in attunement with our emotions.
Yes, full spectrum of emotions.
Mm.
So good. I love it. Goosebumps as you're speaking. Um, and so has there been, let's think about this way. If there was no obstacles in terms of time, energy, or money, is there something that you would be doing or that you would like to share with the world that you're not currently doing?
Mm. Um, Probably work out more. It's funny because I'm just in a busy season of my life at the moment. So it's one of those things that I haven't necessarily prioritized movement for my body as much, which I really feel disconnected from, which is something that I really need to do. But on a bigger scale, I mean, I'm always working towards it. So I think that's the hard thing. It's a really hard question to answer. So I'm not scared to set really big, scary goals and then work towards them. I believe that they're possible. I don't know in the timeline of what that's going to look like, but I'm willing to work towards it. I'm willing to actually bring it to life. So writing my book, it's actually, I've just finished one and I haven't published it yet. And then I actually had like a bit of a download hit in February. And I was like, I actually don't think I should publish this first. I have another idea that I want to bring to life first. And I think that needs to be my first book. So I'm in the process of writing the second book before I've even published the first, which I think is
Amazing.
someone else would look at that and go, you're crazy. But I just know intuitively that it can't be my first book. So
Yeah.
it has to be my second. And I think that that's pretty scary. And I think it's something that I would like to have a lot more time to work on. But at this point in time, I'm a little bit in a busy season, but that's okay. It'll come back around and I'll have space for it. And probably travel, probably the other thing. I'd probably be doing more travel, which I have planned for the rest of the year, but it's one of those things that it's always I love, like, freedom is another one of my core values, and so travel is big on my list. So I think I would love to be able to travel more with people and just, yeah, do more fun things.
That's awesome. That's so fun. Um, it is really interesting what you were saying about it being a busy season, because even though there is this aspect of being and embodying the feminine, there is still an aspect of doing the actions and getting the work done. So yeah, it is such a fine dance and such a fine balance. But it sounds like you know that it's only going to be for a short period of time, and then you'll get to enjoy the rewards of all of your hard
Yeah.
work. So
But I also balance it in the interim. Like, it's not something that it's ignored altogether. It used to be like, I used to be like, nah, it's a busy season, so we're going to go hard and fast,
yeah,
go,
burn
go, go,
out.
burn out. Right. I'd work really long hours and burn out. But now, like, I make sure that I really blend as best I can. But I'm having that real just self-awareness of like, actually, you need to be moving your body more. Like, even in the busy season, you need to prioritizing it. So like getting up earlier and making it happen instead of just letting it go. So like this week being a busy week, I've made time for walks, and last night I went to have a float as
Mm,
well, a sensory deprivation float, because that just helps like fully ground me, which is awesome.
yeah.
So I used to never prioritize that stuff in a busy season, whereas now I'm like, I know the power of being in your full energy, and I know that it's something that I have to do in order to maintain my energy. And I'm talking like frequency and energy, not just physical energy. I mean vibrational energy. And so for me to balance that, I need to actually have the balance of the masculine and feminine. So I'm still doing all the work, but I'm also allowing time for rest, rejuvenation, and recharge.
Yeah, so good. And that vibration frequency is what will allow you to manifest and succeed in your goals, right? It's hand in
100%.
hand. So really powerful. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. Is there anything else that you want to share that's on your heart today that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So I feel like if you're listening to this episode, and whether you have no clue what the hell we're talking about, or whether you're like, this sounds a little bit interesting, I would implore you to start with your money. Like if you've whatever feelings come up when you even think about your relationship with money, I would implore you to take a moment just to really acknowledge how you're currently relating to it and how you would like to relate to it instead. Because we want to bring as much choice back to it as possible. And I think that it can bring up a lot of stuff, whether you are struggling right now or whether you're just getting by. Like I know the cost of living in regards to like mortgage rates, like all the different things that are impacting us in today's day and age. There's always times like this. Like I think this is one of the things that I always look to the past in, never often look to the past, but look to the past for those outliers of like these opportunities that we have gone through challenging times before, and you will go through challenging times again, but how you relate to money will change how you learn, how you actually experience it. So if you choose to actually take back that responsibility and go, well, hang on a minute, like what am I making it mean? How am I interacting with it on day to day? And how can I bring more gratitude to money? Because it can actually be a really great resource to serve you. And when you bring back that responsibility, you can really choose like, okay, so where are we prioritizing this? And how are we utilizing money to support the lifestyle that we want to live as best we can with what we have right now? Right. And then allow ourselves to receive more. But one of the things I think sometimes we can get so caught up in is just repeating old patterns and just getting stuck in those old patterns instead of questioning them. Like stop and question them. It's change your language. Like another big thing with money is change your vocabulary with money. Instead of saying I can't afford that, change it to wouldn't it be great to experience that in the future, right?
Mm,
Or how could I afford that? Right? Shift your headspace to be more of a growth focused activity of like, how could I afford that? How could I make that happen? Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be fun to experience? Right? Or, any type of language that is from a place of lack or scarcity, we want to question that and unpack it, because we can actually come to a place of abundance and not be triggered by the scarcity. I think so much happens when we have that bank account go a little bit low and then we freak out, and that activates our fight or flight response. So if we're able to then learn from that and recognize it's an activation, we don't have to respond in fear. It's an activation saying, I don't like being here. I don't feel safe here. It's not okay for me to be here. So what am I going to do about it? And then your relationship with money will improve day in and day out. The more you start to speak about it in the way that feels good, think about it like a friend and treat it better.
so good. So good. There were two things you said just before that I was like, I wanted to mention that earlier in the podcast. Radical responsibility of beliefs around money, but then also limiting beliefs in general, right? Like when we were talking about parenting stuff, it's like when we do take responsibility, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. We can acknowledge where it's come from, and now we're adults, and it's our turn to shift this.
Yeah.
And then gratitude, and that can amplify your frequency by 5,000 times. It can bring you into your heart space. It is so so powerful. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that as well. There was one more thing that I was going to share, but I think it's escaped me, so it can't be that important. But if people want to find you, I will share in the show notes your link to your bio on Instagram. Sorry, your profile on Instagram. Is there anywhere else that is a good place for people to find you?
Yeah, so we have the Instagram page. We also have a Facebook community, and we also have our own respective Instagram handles as well. So I can share those with you. So if you're more of a business owner, you can come across and check me out at Christine Corcoran _coach on Instagram, or Sarah Matsaranis _coach for her Instagram. Otherwise, we're at Her Money Alliance.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I loved this podcast. Guys, if you're listening to this and you got something out of it, please share it. Please give us a shout out. We will shout you right back. And yeah, thanks so much for joining me. And that's a wrap for today's episode. Listen, if you love what you heard here today, I would love for you to leave a super quick rating and a review. This helps the show get discovered by new people that need to hear what we have to share. Be sure to take a screenshot of today's episode and shout us out on Instagram, and we will shout you right back. You can find us on Instagram handles It's Stacey Turner and the.emma.mcdonald. If you'd like to find additional resources or work with either of us, then DM us on one of these handles today.